G'day, my name is Bruce. You could call me a thread surgeon, or I'd like to take a link out of Keith Fenner, and mine is Get Her Out. Here we have a wide range of items that have been removed from vehicles, machines, all sorts of different types of cars, trucks, mobile equipment, bulldozers, etc. These are not all the items I've taken out over the last 2 years, but they reflect the different styles and types of things we've had to do. These are plugs that were very, very tightly in a subsea item, and I drilled and put a thread in here, and with a socket and a screw and a bolt, I extracted that one out. This one went from that size, probably it's around about 10 mil, right up to 16 millimeters until I could finally get the grip, enough grip to pull it out. Up until then, it was seized in, frozen so hard, there was no way it would just strip the threads. These are engine head bolts that have been broken out, and I've had to get the threads out. In a lot of cases, the thread started that deep down below the head face, all different sizes, smaller, larger. This one here is about 5/8, 16 mil. Glow plugs of all different sizes, different types of glow plugs. They're seized and locked inside here. They're quite difficult to get out. Pins. This is a locking pin, and it was bent in the middle. It was about that long, in a big side of a tube, locking a shaft, and I had to drill that out and remove it, cut the taper a little bit larger and go to the next size pin when we introduced the new shaft into it. These are locking devices that lock around a bolt, and they were seized in, and the item, another subsea tool, where you couldn't access these locks at all. They'd been badly bruised, so we had to grind them out, and that was high tensile stainless. So there's a few of those. Tiny little bolts. Got some even smaller there. Ezi Outs that have been broken off. Had to get out the Ezi Out and then extract the bolt. Thread taps, all different sizes of thread taps that have been sheared. These are spiral flute ones. These ones I extracted with using the EDM, the spark eroder, and I eroded through them and got that spiral flute out of a tool which was about 2 meters long, about 6 foot long, and around about 18 inches or 300 mil, 400 millimeters diameter, large shaft. Bolts that have been locked up and twisted, and got them out. Crankshaft bolts, just recently, this is one from 3 or 4 days ago. A wheel stud nut, a wheel stud that the owner had bought a second-hand car, and they didn't have the key to fit it, and she couldn't find a key, so I drilled that out and got that out. Large bolts. These have been drilled the second time and then picked up with a parallel Ezi Out and got those out. This one here was a mate of this one. This one I just touched it and I could feel it move, and with a left-hand drill bit I managed, and some freezing agent, I managed to get that one out without having to go to that trouble. Plugs, once again had issues getting these plugs out. These are nozzles from drilling heads. They are carbide, so you can't drill them or grab them with anything, so they have to be broken out. And there was a secret in these particular ones, in this one drill head, that we had great difficulty breaking them up. And we discovered that the company used a special Loctite, and these had to be heated to 350 degrees to break the Loctite seal in order for us to remove them. We have a special key that removes those. Coil inserts that had failed. There's quite a few here that people have put in and they didn't work. One of them was put in and they didn't even break the tang off, so I had to remove those. Another plug with an Allen key end in it, to cut off this shroud and drill through and get that out. Now, this bolt here that had been extremely tight, and they twisted it to a point where it actually become tapered. It's an endless array here. What's left from this glow plug. It's a part of the item that was seized over a long distance. Extremely difficult to get some of those out. This is a carbide a steel pin that I eroded. It's a little stainless steel bolt, but very stubborn. Here's one that somebody had applied huge heat to and didn't help. They couldn't get it out. All sorts of items. This is part of that that subsea item. I've lost it. Here it is. This is one of the pieces of carbide. We just broke them out by smashing them. Pins, all sorts of types of pins. Another thing, and I have many more inside here, and inside there, and inside there, and inside here. In most cases, the real trick is to get centre on. That's the hard part. That's where most people miss out, particularly if it's an engine, a bolt broken, an exhaust manifold broken in the firewall area where you have to work with mirrors and other different applications where there's bolts or studs broken in difficult to see, difficult to get to, difficult to reach, difficult to when you're not looking straight onto something, then you also find it extremely difficult to keep the drills running in a true parallel train, and that's why we end up with some of these bolts that get drilled off centre, and that from here starts the problems. And if somebody drills it off centre and then puts an Ezi Out in, which is a misnomer, if it doesn't come out easy, don't use an Ezi Out. And they break off, and then they lock between the stud and the wall. They lock up, and then they snap them, and then they call the surgeon in. One of the items that I use in order to make sure that I can get a straight on or parallel drilling is I've made up this device, which is, this one's from 3mm progressively through to 16mm as a guide for drilling, setting the face hard up against an existing face and lining it up and then drilling through there. In the cases I've even used those for tapping. I have a few of those. The other way is to make up a plate, and this particular plate I use quite often for heads. I've got a few different sizes here and a small pilot hole, and then I can bolt that and adjust it. It doesn't have to be a head, it can be exhaust manifold to get it right, and then I use it as a guide. Another item I have, and I have several of these, this one I use for drilling out broken crank bolts. The crank bolt's been snapped off. In order for me to try and get the bolt out, the stud out, without damaging the thread around, I use this. I've machined this up to fit on this one was a Mitsubishi, a screw in there to lock into the keyway, and that guide I put smaller guides in for drilling the pilot hole, and then this one will come up to a tapping size for that M14 or M16 bolt. This one is a little bit smaller, and in occasions I rework these if I have to go larger and put a coil or a solid insert in. Yesterday I did a job on a truck. That truck had a broken bolt in. It was broken off here, which is that much below the surface. So in order to make sure that I get this out without damaging the outside thread, the casting, I had to make sure that I'm 100% on centre of that stud to drill down that deep and get it out. So what I did is I made this plate, cut this plate up, and I mounted that adjacent to the bolt hole. The bolt hole was here, and I drilled progressively. Prior to drilling, I took this is 16 millimetre, so I took a 16 millimetre end mill, and I milled down with a magnetic chuck mounted on the magnetic drill mounted on this base plate, which gave me true parallelism. I then machined the broken part of the stud here. I machined that flat. That then allowed me to do a centre drill, inspect it, so I was happy with it, and then I drilled through that much of the bolt and progressively went up in size. When I was very close to the outside wall, I drilled a hole the size of the largest parallel extractor that I had, or that was useful for this particular job, and it attempted to extract it. It didn't work, so I progressively went up to the tapping size of that thread, and the result was that I had a nice clean. The drill was the bolt was completely drilled out, with the exception of the thread. All this got drilled out, and I unwound that thread out. That's not all of it, but that's the majority of it. Cleaned up the thread, job done. So that's it in a nutshell, and we'll revisit some of these in a future movie.